Welcome to Crimson Guitars, welcome to my home studio, and welcome to a pretty unique, very small-bodied, multi-scale acoustic. Small-bodied acoustic? It's a strange guitar build. I'm making this thing from scratch. I am having a total blast, and I hope you're enjoying it. Here's where we're at so far. This is going to be interesting. I do love this process. I wish I did it more. I hope that, if nothing else, this was entertaining. I never thought that I would ever try and bend a 5-piece side, 6-piece side to an instrument, but here we are. It's going to look amazing. It is going to look incredible when it's done. Of course, I'm making my life rather more difficult than it needs to be. Burn it. Today, the fun begins. Haha, yay! In this episode, we're gonna have some fun. I'm gonna make the kerfing for the back and the sides, which is going to be done on the contractor saw, the Triton saw over there. I am going to glue some of that to the sides. I am going to hopefully make bracing for the back and the top. We are essentially building the opposite of what I thought I was going to be building when I started this. The initial instrument was going to be a solid body, hollowed out, much like any other electroacoustic out there. It's morphed into something where I'm bending the sides. I'm going to brace it in exactly the same way as I would if I was building a steel string guitar, etc. It's strange. I'm using a Spanish neck joint, I think. And to top that all off, it's made out of the most sumptuous woods imaginable. There is some springing on the sides that I bent last week. We're going to go back and just touch those up on the bending iron a little bit. Then, really, this guitar is coming together. In this area, I want the sound hole to be left hollow, so you've actually got some sound coming out just because, which means I'm going to need to put a solid. The kerfing isn't going to bend in there either, so I'm going to glue a solid section in, top and bottom. Not entirely sure what the kerfing is going to be like there. I might have kerfing, I might not. We'll see. The wiring. We're hoping to have a floating neck pickup mounted on the end of the neck here. We're working on a custom one at Crimson as I speak, which means that there's going to have to be, well, there's going to have to be a hole drilled underneath the pickup for the wire, which is fine, but we don't have control cavities. So, and I don't want control cavities. The potentiometer is going to come in through that sound hole. We might end up with a jack in the tail block, true acoustic style, but I'm going to have to either have wires in there before the top gets glued on, or put everything through that sound hole, which should be interesting. We'll get there eventually. There we go. Nice. and I'm moving on to the kerfing now. So I've got this chunk of highly flamed sycamore. It is perfectly quarter sawn along down that way. So I'm going to chop off the quarter sawn strips. I need 2 of them at this length to make sure that I've got enough kerfing to go top and back. Before I bounce anything out though, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you about our Lord and Master, the handplane. I am, just going to make a couple of perfect faces before we get onto the machines. Go from there. Oh my God. It's even going with the grain. Low angle it is. That was not a nice noise, was it? This is so figured. I might need to actually use a sander on this. We're getting there. Next up is the kerfing. I'm chopping off a couple of strips at about 4 millimeters or so. I'm running them through the Triton thicknesser. And then over the contractor's saw with our kerfing jig that we made in the last episode. All right, protection, music. So what we're after is a little bit of wood left, enough that we can bend it without doing that, without breaking it. And 0.5 millimeter, 3/4 of a millimeter or so is about where we want to end up. So adjust your saw until it's cutting correctly. You can do this by hand. You could even do this with a fret slotting mitre jig if you really wanted to. Yeah, you'd have a smaller curve, but equally viable. Onwards. The end result is going to be pretty sexy. A little bit of hand plane work after that. Maybe sanding, thicknessing jig that we made 2 weeks ago. I haven't digressed much this week, have I? Once the wider bands of kerfing are sanded down and relatively presentable, it's time to run it through the bandsaw. Again, I need to make sure that there is 0 clearance between the blade and the internals of the bandsaw. I don't want this being sucked down. I still have a 10 TPI blade on here, which is relatively gentle, if you can think of a bandsaw as being gentle. But yeah, with proper support and being careful not to put my own fingers in the way, it seems to be fairly straightforward to cut through. I find halfway through that using my sanding block, which in this build so far has been a sanding block and a steam bending block, and now a, I don't know, feed block for the bandsaw. It feels a little bit safer and is allowing me to support the kerfing much closer to the blade. Obviously, part of my 4 kerfing bands have turned into 10 or more, but that's fine. Now, I need to go and buy some clothes pegs. Several hundred clothes pegs, and I plan to glue this kerfing in. Let's see about that, huh? I was not 100% certain that these would be strong enough, and quite frankly, they are. You don't need huge amounts of pressure if you have a good joint. That is the same whatever you are making. So the worry is that the pegs don't hold it down front and back, and you end up with gaps, and that's why I thought that I might have to modify these pegs to make them a little bit stronger. But yeah, it's not required. We don't have any issues. And now you see why I bought 200. Don't do this at home. Multi-piece strangeness. Okay. Anyway, I'm taking that to the mold. So we've got roughly the right shape. Well, not roughly, we've got the right shape. It is in place. And then, yeah, and we can go from there. The trick is to cut these to exactly the right length before you start bending, which is, I messed up on the last one. I take it back, this little corner needs a little bit more support. So just because you're doing something on the fly does not mean that you should not follow your correct procedures, and I should have pre-clamped it up just to make sure that everything would work. I was going to use those. They didn't work. Ended up breaking a few up and doing that. I mean, it's clamped up. Be fine. Just, you know, somewhat embarrassing. Fantastic. With this sort of thing, you only really need to leave the glue to cure for half an hour, 40 minutes, and it's been way longer than that. I stopped for a coffee or 3. Come on then, let's see what happens. I'm excited. I thought I'd glued it to the mold for a second, somehow. Oh, there we go. A beginning. A little bit fiddly still, but we'll get there. Now for the other side. All right, I've taken one of my side clamps, turned it inside out. I don't have any expansion clamps specifically for acoustic building because I haven't done much of this in the past few years. Nice. One thing you need to be very aware of when gluing in your kerfing is that it is nice and square to the edge, to the sides, etc. If you do not do that, you will, you know, go off the edge, but also trying to push it in will then distort the sides. Adjustable wedge. Turns out I only needed 100 of these pegs. Last week I made a bit of a faux pas. I said I've never imagined building an instrument's sides in 6 whole pieces. And one or two of you pointed out that I used to build violin type instruments and they have 6 sides. Yeah, all joined together. Feel a bit daft. Anyway, we are not quite done with the sides, and it's not homogeneous. A normal guitar at this point would have, as well as the heel block, a neck block. The sides would be hooked onto it, and you could take it out and it would be one piece. We're not doing that because we're using a Spanish joint, i.e. the two sides next to the neck are actually going to be inlaid into the neck for strength and stability. Yeah, it's just the way it goes. And we've also got this massive sound port on this side. So for the rest of this video, we are going to be making it a little bit more solid, at least in the short term. I've used a very thin burr, and there has been a lot of talk about how stable that is going to be over time with regards to changes in humidity, etc. And with most instruments of this sort, you would put stiffening bars at various points around the circumference of the instrument, and that is what we're going to do next, and that is hopefully going to protect it from adverse crackage, etc. I love playing with wood. Stop it. Where we are at is a temporary block spot glued in place just with super glue, and this joins the two halves as they currently are. The whole point is that I need to be able to sand this whole thing down at a radius, front and back, and it needs to be homogeneous for that. So that block will be taken out when we do the Spanish heel later. And our central section here is gluing up, and that's going to be a lovely little sound port here. I think the dog's been locked out, and she's being very loud. Let me in. I am the boss. She doesn't know she isn't a cat. Yeah, well, this is going quite well. I now need to sort out the support blocks. Take a straight edge, and then your fingers are safe, and it should be straight. Much better. That is not the way. That is the way. The only thing I need to add is this sound port thing. And then I will have a homogeneous, gorgeous side. Let's get to that. The 30s. With that, we have we've done it. Fantastic. So there's a temporary block in there. Everything else is solid and good. Not quite as sexy inside as I had hoped. But then again, well, I've still got some sanding to do, so we'll see. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. This guitar is coming together. Obviously the neck is almost finished. Next week I am going to be making braces for the back. I'm going to be radiusing the front and the back of these sides. I am going to be, at the very least, gluing the back on and working out how the neck is going to be done and the break angle and all of that jazz. This project is coming together. There's very little else to say. Please click like and subscribe. If you fancy more in-depth stuff than you get on YouTube, check out our Patreon. We have a small group of supporters there who recently helped buy a GoPro system, which I'm going to be playing with soon, and they get raw edits, so a lot more data than you see, and I answer questions every week, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, and I personally would very much appreciate your support. But other than that, yeah, just leave a comment below and ask me a question. I answer almost all of them. In fact, it takes me almost as much time going through comments and answering comments as it does filming the videos. But I enjoyed it all. Thank you for being amazing. I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.